the war began, World War II, there was a draft on that didn't have enough soldiers for the battle that they got involved in Europe, and they had Japan and Europe battle going on at the same time. So there wasn't enough enlisted men, and so they developed the draft system, and you had to be a certain age. Once you reached a certain age, then you were subject to draft. They would call you and say you'd get a letter from the government and stating that you were appointed to be a soldier. So I registered, and one of the questions was your religion and your beliefs and what religion you belong to and all that. And so I also put an extra thing. I said, I do not believe in killing human beings. And I said, that's my religious belief. And so I turned that in, and that's it. And it came a day they called me anyway. I thought they would just not call me because I was of that religion that we didn't believe in killing. And I took it as a child. Well, I was 21 then when they sent me a letter of draft, and I called them and I said, I don't believe in killing, and I put it on my application that I don't believe in killing. They ignored me. They acted like they didn't hear me talk. And so I went home after I talked to the board, draft board, and I just waited for them to call me in. And so it came a time when they needed more troops. Then they called me in, and I was sent to camp in the state of Tennessee. Took my training, basic training there, and the first thing they issued me was the soldiers' clothing. And nonetheless, they had put me into a rifle company, and they issued me an M1 rifle that I was to take my training with. And so I did all the training that I could, and I didn't go around saying that I'm not going to kill anybody. I kept it to myself. I thought, well, this is a secret between me and God now. They ignored me, so I made up my mind that this would be a secret between me and God and the Lord Jesus, my Savior. And so I made up my mind I would not kill. I took the training faithfully, and by all means, they knew that I took the training seriously. Otherwise, I would never have made expert on the rifle range. And so me and a farm kid from Pennsylvania, the only two in a 200-man company, made expert rifle on the range. And so I was on my way to become a rifleman. But in the meantime, we took a lot of training and also anti-tank training. And it came time they developed the bazooka. Ours was a big thing, big tube, about this long. And they called it a bazooka. And it was just in developing stage. But they issued me one of those bazookas. And so one day we went on a field demonstration to show the division what this bazooka would do. A good thing that they didn't ask me to be in that demonstration, but there were some other soldiers selected, and they were out there in the middle of the field, and they were going to actually fire this bazooka to demonstrate it. And so in front of the whole division, we were all out there away from where he was going to fire this, and it was put on the man's shoulder and went right by his face. He was the man who held it, and then the gunner stood behind him, and he would be the one that set it off. I forget now where the trigger was and all that, but anyway, it was very, very simple thing, not fully developed like the guns they have today. It was just a tube with a trigger on it and a firing pin of some kind. So I never did see the shell that went in there. We didn't have them issued to us because we were in the States and we weren't allowed to have live ammunition right then. But anyway, as they were putting this demonstration on in front of the division, or an infantry division, and the command went to fire, and the man pulled the trigger and it exploded in this man's face and he went over dead. They dismissed us all real quick, and they withdrew all these bazookas from everybody that had them. So that was the end of the bazooka training, and that was enough of a scare. Here I was ready to go overseas, and I had that in my head, seeing this man die on the field through a demonstration that was supposed to be teaching us how to use this weapon, new weapon. Well, that was a bad experience. But anyway, I took my training very seriously, and on the rifle range I made expert, and I continued to be a good soldier. And many times on the marches we'd go out for training and see how they would develop physically, how much strain they could take on a forced march, and also on how much weight that we would have to have a full pack on our shoulders and a steel helmet and these big boots on, and then sometimes they would take us on a running mission and see how much we were able to take, and some of us, especially me, I had a mitral valve prolapse, and they didn't know it. They said I had a murmuring heart. I went to the doctor a couple of times, and he told me I had a murmuring heart. But finally I found out that I was born with it. It was a mitral valve prolapse. That's what I have. And many times I couldn't stand up with the troops as they ran, with this heavy pack on and everything. Sometimes the sergeant would come along and he'd take my pack off my shoulder, and he would carry two packs. He'd carry his and mine too. And I would just barely keep after the troops. And I took that training and I continued doing that, and they kept me there, even knowing that I was making an honest effort. They still wanted me in the infantry and with that heavy pack and all, and I continued to take that training. At camp, I brought my hair clippers with me, and the scissors and the comb, a barber's comb. And I would do our soldiers. They want me to cut their hair. I did my father. That's where I learned. My brothers, I cut their hair, you know. And so I thought I'd bring it with me as a soldier. So I brought them. When I got drafted, I brought the clippers, hand clippers, and the scissors and the comb. And there I was cutting the soldiers. And the captain found out that I was cutting hair. I was making a nickel, a quarter, whatever they give me, you know. And I was sending money home just from cutting hair at camp. And the captain came, and he wanted me to cut his hair. I said, boy, I nipped many a ear, you know, with the scissors. And I said, if I nip the captain's ear, he's going to kick me out of the outfit. And so I managed to do the captain. Then the first sergeant, he was a Christian. He wanted me to cut his hair. And so after having all that military training, because I became friendly with them through the cutting of their hair, my first sergeant, he found out I was a Christian. He was a Christian, you know? And I don't know if the captain was a Christian or not, but anyway, they got to liking me because I cut their hair. And nobody was as popular as I was, because who would touch the captain? I touched the captain's head, you know? And boy, I felt like I was a real soldier because I was doing the captain's hair. And so I took the rifleman's training. And there came a time, before we went overseas, there was a change in Jeep drivers. They decided before I went overseas they were going to send me to a school in Fort Benning, Georgia. What for? Take motor mechanics training. Why? I didn't know why. I took motor mechanics training. So when I came back to camp, I left Fort Benning, Georgia. That's where they had that mechanics training. I went back to my camp in Tennessee, and the first sergeant, we were getting ready to go overseas. And the first sergeant, for some reason, why there was a vacancy for a Jeep driver, and we still had some more time in the States, and I was to go through some Jeep training now. I thought, well, why Jeep? And then he told me that I was permanent Jeep driver. So when I go overseas, I was no more a rifleman, I was a Jeep driver. How about that? Huh? A Christian first sergeant, liking me because I cut his hair, put me on a Jeep. There was 200 guys to pick from in the outfit. He picked me to be a Jeep driver. I say that was God. Took me away from being a foot soldier with a rifle to be on a Jeep. We had a gun, I had a machine gun, a 30 caliber machine gun on the Jeep. And I had the order, I had the authority to give the order to shoot. I had to. That was my duty. If anybody came out there in front of us, I was to give the order to shoot. But here I am now, a Jeep driver. No more rifleman. That was God. And then I really praised the Lord for that. And so when I got out there where I could have shot, I could have fired on people, I didn't do it. I didn't go around boasting that I'm not going to shoot anybody. I didn't go. That was between me and God. I told them to start with, I don't believe in killing. And that was it. I never had to say it again. And so that's what God did for me. He made it possible that I didn't have to shoot anybody. And so I thank God for that. I thank God. I never killed anybody. After all the training we had in the States, I was sent overseas. We went over in the biggest ship that the country had, the Queen Mary. That was the biggest ship that the United States owned. And we went unescorted across the ocean because it had this ability to zigzag. It had the ability to change lanes every now and then. And the Germans weren't able to zero in on them with their, what they call those?
Torpedoes?
Torpedoes that they had for water warfare. And so this Queen Mary would zigzag all the way across the the ocean, and it never was hit by any. It brought over thousands of troops to Europe. And we went to England first, and then after the war started, then we crossed the English Channel, and we landed in France. The United States Army had already started to push the Germans back. And so when I landed, what we were doing as we entered France, they were already pushing out of France, and there were some leftovers, rear echelon that had been still in the woods, different places in France. In one of the first battles, I was on this Jeep following the captain through a woods, and I heard the bullets whizzing by. And first time I heard bullets whizzing by my head, and I saw the captain hit the ground, and I hit the ground the same way as he did. Then suddenly he gets up and he starts walking, and I wasn't wanting to walk behind him again. And so, but there I was. These bullets were going, and I was actually trembling on the ground. My body was trembling. I couldn't stay still. I was so filled with fear. So finally I did get on my feet. I saw my buddies walking around in the woods there. I thought, well, everybody's getting killed. And so then the captain says for me to go forward with the Jeep. One of the soldiers got killed, and I was to pick him up and take him back to the first aid station. And here it was, the biggest man in our outfit, big, tall, a Texan. He was a big man, big, and he was the first man killed. And now I had to be the one to pick him up, and me and another kid, we went out there, and I was a puny, small guy, you know, I wasn't the big muscle man like this guy here. But I was a puny little guy, and there I was with another guy picking up this big soldier. And we put him in our trailer, put him in my trailer like a piece of wood, and brought him back to the first aid station. That was my first experience with a dead soldier. And it was terrible. It was a terrible feeling, but I decided I'm a soldier, I've got to go ahead with the troops. And so after many times I found that as I put my confidence in the Lord, I knew I was going to be all right. I was an assistant Jeep driver at that time, and so the sergeant who was in charge of the company Jeeps, we only had 2 Jeeps in the company, a rifle company, and so this sergeant, he was kind of a fearful guy, and every time there was some need to go forward to where the troops were, to bring supplies, bring ammunition to them, he would select me and say, you go. And then when it was something that was more or less less fearful with, he would go. He would go forward with the ammunition and the food or the dry clothing that had to be delivered to the troops up front. And so then that continued for a long time. And so I had the responsibility that when I was commanded by him, I was to obey. And if he gave all the trips forward for me to do, I wasn't to rebel. I was to not say, hey, it's your turn. I couldn't say that. I had to obey him. So it got to the point where he began to boast. He's telling me what he's going to do when he goes home. He was from Pittsburgh. And he's telling me all the things he's going to do when he goes home. And sometimes I would get angry with him. I'd say, you don't know if you're going to make it home. And I said, you better be careful how you talk, because you might not make it. And so I knew I would always tell them about Jesus. I would tell them that I'm trusting the Lord for my life. And so there it was. That went on for a long time, that feud between me and him. But I had to obey him. I couldn't argue with him. But I found that there were times when I was ordered to do things that I thought it was ridiculous. The Germans had already come forward quite a lot, and we had to keep pushing them back. And so one time the captain called me to a dark place where he had a little tent set up, and he had just a little flickering light in there. It didn't dare make any real light. And so he called me in. He had a mission for me to do. Evidently I had a good reputation about traveling out there. I never got lost. And when it was time to go out to the troops, I found them every time. And I brought their supplies to them. And we stayed back just a while, a short distance. But where the command post was, we would never go further back than that. And so the captain called me this time to come to the tent. And he was going to show me the supplies that I had to bring to the troops. Always had to have this trailer also, not only the Jeep, but it had a trailer to bring enough stuff forward to the troops. And so I was instructed by this captain, or no, it was a major. He was a battalion commander. He was a major. And so he brought me in there and he told me, Tony, you can't have anything written on paper. No notes, you can't make any notes. Everything I tell you, put it in your head. And he gave me directions where I was to go in the dark to deliver these supplies. And so he gave me all the instructions. He showed me a map. He showed me a map where I was to go. But he says, you're not to write anything down. You're not even supposed to have a pencil with you. And so I had to put that all in my mind, everything I saw on that map. Like a tree here, you make a right turn. A barn, and where the barn is, you have to make a left turn. Or, you know, things like that. And so I memorized it. And so I got loaded with all the supplies, and it was so dark we weren't allowed to have even the, what they call it, little eyes on the Jeep. We couldn't have those little tiny lights, couldn't even have those on, because it was so dangerous. The Germans were mixed in around different places where our troops were, and so they had to search them out and wipe them out. And so I thought, how am I going to see the roads? How am I going to see these land signs? How am I going to see them? So I decided to put my assistant driver on the front of the Jeep. And I sat on the hood. And I thought, if he hits anything, I'm gone, you know. But I kept saying, to the right, to the left, forward, go straight, 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 left, right. And that's how we got where we got. And one time, there was a bomb hole in the road, and we just barely missed it. Then another time, one of the other Jeeps went into a hole, and we had to all jump out and pull that Jeep out of the hole. And so that's how we got to the troops. So I had a lot of experiences like that. It came time as we went further in, we chased the Germans back farther, and we were moving on. Even in daylight, we were pushing them ahead, pushing them back, and we were going ahead. And there were some changes made, and the sergeant that was in charge of the Jeeps, he always took the assignments that he thought was easy. One day there was a need for a new captain up front. Evidently somebody got killed, and they had to bring an officer forward. And so he thought it was going to be a snap, and this sergeant that was over me, he took that trip to bring this captain up there to the front. And so it was daylight, and he took this trip, and the Germans had placed landmines to knock out trucks and tanks. And so this sergeant, taking this assignment, he made a big mistake, and it was my saving. He hit a landmine and was killed. He and this captain that he was bringing to command the troops, he and this captain were, the Jeep was turned upside down in the field, and they both got killed. And then I was in charge of the two company Jeeps, and I had to take all the risks. They assigned me a young boy to be my assistant, and I had a 30 caliber machine gun mounted on the right side of my Jeep, and they assigned this young boy to be with me. Well, I was young too then, not only him, a young boy. I was a young boy too, but anyway, he was my assistant. And many times I would tell him, we were bringing supplies in daylight. One time there was a certain place where our troops were pinned down, and they were running out of ammunition, and they wanted me to bring a supply down with just a Jeep, drop the trailer so I could make it in a big hurry. And so he and I went to many missions like that, and I had the habit of telling him, I said, we're going down through this woods and I heard that they're firing on the people that go down this woods. I says, keep your finger on the trigger. Me, who didn't believe in killing, I says, keep your finger on the trigger. And I made a silent prayer. I said, Lord, don't let anybody come out in front of us. I don't want them killed. And this very same place that I had to travel, the other Jeep, we had another new driver for that Jeep, and so many times he would go in missions like that, and he'd come back and say he was fired upon. And that very same road that I was supposed to go, he'd come back and he'd say he was fired upon, and he was just lucky to get out. And so here I was going down this same wooded road. It was just nothing but woods, and had to go down to this little town where the troops were that needed ammunition. Every time we went down, we never got fired on. The other Jeep would go the same road and they'd get fired on. And so I said, Lord, I thank you. It was God protecting me and teaching me that I could trust Him. And so I was not responsible for anybody being killed by the gun that was on my Jeep. Norville, France, September 1944. The United States quartermaster never gave me anything warm to wear on a Jeep. You know what I did? I was so cold many times on a Jeep, I did something illegal for an American soldier to do. I decided I'm going to put one of these on. And so I took a pair of pants that I found that belonged to the German. These pants were German combat clothing, not dress uniform. I even had the captain on the Jeep many times. I'd take him out somewhere and take the captain, and I had those pants on. He could have court-martialed me, but you know why he didn't? I had it full of mud. When I drove that Jeep, I hit every mud pile I could hit, and I got all plastered with mud. And I didn't wash any of the mud off, and that's how I kept warm with those pants. Illegal pants. I was also issued an M1 rifle. That's how I took my training, and I knew how to fire it. And I had a 45 in a holder on my belt, and I had another big, what was it? I forgot now. Another thing on the Jeep in case we lost control of these that we had close by. We'd always have another one we'd grab, you know. And so had all this ammunition and all these weapons right at our fingertips, and I never had to use them. One time we were traveling because there was a big lapse between meeting troops to battle with, and so they would make a forward move with the vehicles. The German airplanes came down on us to strafe the convoy, and we were on the tail end. What they do, they hit the front end of the convoy and the back end. That way it catches them all. When I saw this plane coming down, I was on the tail end of the convoy. When I saw this plane coming down to hit us, I turned the Jeep off the road into the bushes, and a big briar caught me across the face. And it affected this eye, and I had to wear a patch on my eye because that was. But anyway, we both hit the dirt, and we got into a ditch, and the bullets were popping all around us. But it missed the whole Jeep. It missed the whole Jeep. He must have been aiming the ones ahead of us. But anyway, we got back on the Jeep, but I couldn't see because this eye was bloody and it was injured. So I put a rag on it, or a handkerchief or whatever I had, and I blocked this eye. And so I went until I could see a medic. I had to drive with that patch on my eye. There was another time when they had to have added troops up front. They lost so many soldiers that went back to the first aid station, and so they needed replacements. And they didn't know who to get to drive. The rear echelon didn't know who to get to drive an old truck. They had a three-quarter ton, they call it. That's what we called it then. It was a bigger truck, bigger than Jeeps, and they could take about 10 or 20 soldiers on it. Had seats in there that they could sit down. But then they picked on me. They said, he's a good driver, get him. And so the captain sent me back to get this other vehicle with all these replacement troops on it. And the thing had a broken muffler. And here I was going up to the front with troops on the truck, and it sounded like a tank with a broken muffler. And I had to go down a steep hill to go into this town where the troops were pinned down. And I thought, well, how am I gonna go down there with this thing making all this noise? And they're not going to fire on me. They had big guns down there, and they could hear me up on the top of that hill, and so they could even see me on that road. I thought, how am I going to do that? And it was kind of dusk, getting dark, and I said, I know what I'll do. Just within my own mind, the Lord gave me the wisdom. I said, I know what I'm going to do. I know what tanks sound like when they're making turns and all. I know what they sound like. So I drove it like a tank. I made the motor roar. And just as I was at the edge of the top of the hill, I was supposed to make a dead right-hand turn, a left-hand turn. And this thing wouldn't turn. It was a kind of steering that didn't turn like a Jeep. And so I just kept going with my engine like a tank, making these little turns around that big that curve. And I made the most noise I could ever make. And there I was, I made the turn, and I was on down this hill, and I made it roar like a tank, And I thought, if they know this is a tank, they're not going to fire on me. They're going to go run and hide. So I got all the way down the town, and I dropped off all the ammunition and the food and the clothing that they needed, and I was on the way back. I said, now they're going to get me on the way back. How am I going to drive this and make all that noise going back? And I was able to do it. And I made that noise going back up the hill, and nobody fired on me. So I thought, well, I outsmarted them. So that was an experience that I think only God put in my mind. And I really made that thing roar. And so I had a lot of fun even at that. Even in spite of the danger, I had fun. I told my buddies what I had done, and so they laughed about it. Had other experiences where the bridge was burned out, and we had to go down where the bridge went down like that. They knocked out the center part of the bridge, and the road went. And they stopped the whole convoy, and we were supposed to go down this half bridge. And if you weren't careful, the two bridges were like this, part of the bridges. And if you weren't careful, you'd smash into this over here, and then we had to go down a steep grade. There I was loaded with ammunition and different things for the troops, and I had to go down this broken bridge. and that other trucks were doing it. I thought, well, I can do it too. And so I started down this, and then there was a captain down the bottom of there that he was signaling us a certain, after we got down a certain distance, that we were to turn off, because otherwise we'd crash into that other part of the bridge. We didn't see that from the top. So we didn't see it until we got down there. And so he gave me a signal to make a right turn off of that piece of the bridge that I was driving on. And I made it. And now these other guys made it too. And so those are some of the dangers we had. Knocked out bridges. We had to go down. That was the only way out, the only way to get to where we were going. So that was another experience of difficult things. Talk about my Jeep. It had a hole in the roof. We weren't allowed to have the roof on until toward the end of the war. Then we were allowed to have our roofs up, a canvas roof, you know. And so one time we were in a town. Troops of the Germans were already going back, and our troops came in for rest at this town. And it was a farmhouse. In Germany, the farmhouse and the barn were all incorporated in one big circle, and they had a big, it must have been a stone fence all around they call it a compound. And they had a big manure pile in the middle. The cattle and the horses were in there, and then the house was all attached. And there was a big gate. So this gate was open, the captain was in that house. And somebody gave me a command to take to the captain. I was outside this building, and and so they gave me some orders to bring to the captain. He was in the house, and I thought, well, I better take my assistant with me. I thought the two of us better. We didn't hear any firing at that time, but there was some firing, and so hearing that noise, I decided to take some security. I took him with me. If one of us got killed, the other one could bring the command to the captain. So we started in this big gate. It was open. The captain was right in front of us, inside the house. And I could see there was a door open into the hallway of that house. And just something told me that we just started in that gate. I said, I feel we ought to run. We should run to that door. Let's run to that door. And we started to run as hard as we could. We ran. We just approached the door, and a big shell hit right in the center of that courtyard. It knocked us both in the door. Our helmets flew off, and we were on the floor. The concussion that we felt knocked us down in that door. Good thing we were that close. It threw us in the building. Otherwise, if we were out there on the ground, we'd have probably got some shrapnel, and we might have even been killed. But that was the hand of God. Another time, we were at a rest period, and on a farmhouse in Germany, and the troops were all in the house, and the house had this barn that was attached to the house, and I parked my Jeep outside that barn door, and we were inside talking and laughing and all inside the barn, and I got a feeling I better move my Jeep. I says, hey, I'm going out there. There was no firing, no shells, nothing, no noise. I just had that feeling again. I said, I better move my Jeep. I told a couple of guys, I says, you open these doors when I say, and as soon as I get in, I'm going to bring the Jeep in the barn. As soon as I get in, slam them closed. So they had their instructions. So I got out there in the Jeep. I started the engine and I said, "Open up," and they opened the doors, and I gunned it in there, and they slammed the doors shut. They no sooner slammed those doors shut. A shell, I went out there, a shell hit the ground right there. And I went out to see after it was over with, right between the wheel tracks of the Jeep, there was a hole in the driveway. That Jeep would have been totally gone. But nonetheless, I looked at my Jeep as I went back in, and the canvas, I had the canvas top up. There was a piece of shrapnel that went through the back part of the Jeep's canvas and came out at the head of the driver, right where the driver would have been. There was a hole in the canvas. If I had stayed in the Jeep while I was in there, when I went in there, I jumped out of the Jeep real quick. If I was in the Jeep when that shell hit, I would have got it in the back of my head. And that's what I calculated by where the hole was in the canvas. And so there, God spared me. Not only did I save the Jeep, but God saved me from being killed with a piece of shrapnel. So I saw these things God had done for me, and I just marvel at all the things that the Lord had done for me. And all the same time, that thing was in me that I did not want to kill. And God did not permit me to kill anybody. Well, many of our boys were going bald, and we had jigger problems too, the bugs that gnawed in your flesh, and they lived under your skin and made sores. If you scratched, you made a lot of sores from this. So I had a solution for that, and so I sent home for nail polish from my sisters. They wanted, I must have a girlfriend out there. I want nail polish. I said, "Oh no, it's not a girlfriend. I have chiggers in my body, in my flesh, and you put this nail polish on it, and it smothered them, and they would die under your skin. And all you do is peel them off, And so that's what I learned to do. And then all the other guys wanted some nail polish, so they began to send home for nail polish to kill the chiggers in their body. That was in the States. The hair, now because I was wearing this heavy helmet, I don't know if they're the same today. Are they padded today?
They're Kevlar, and they have a little leather band on the inside.
It has some give to it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. See, ours, it was down smack on your head, and it smashed your hair down tight. And the guys were losing their hair. And I thought, I don't want to lose my hair. I don't want to go home bald-headed. And so I decided I'm going to try something. So these guys were all putting up with their fancy stuff, from their sisters would send it to them. Their wife was sending this fancy stuff, this smelly stuff, and I didn't want that. So I thought I'd be smart. I'd try something different, something that has some body to it. We had olive oil for salad at home, and I don't know if as a kid, maybe I did try some olive oil. Maybe when I was a kid, maybe I was putting oil to keep my hair down. That might have been the original idea where I got it. I was doing it as a kid at home to keep my hair slicked down. I was getting to the age where I was after girls. I wanted a girl who liked me. And if my hair was blown by the wind, it looked like a scuzzy kid. I wanted to look slick, have that hair down nice. And so I think that's where it started. That's coming to me now. And it was the use of the oil home that made me send home for oil. And my sisters sent it to me every now and then. And I don't know if I gave it to other guys to use or not, but I saved my hair. And when I came home, I had the full head of hair. And as other guys went home bald because of the pressure of the helmet. And that thing moved around. You know, it would work your hair. It would make your hair break off. And so, but mine, it was slick, and so it slid around easy, and didn't tear my hair up.
You said the inside of your helmet was all slimy?
Yeah, it was all sticky and slimy, and I didn't care. But here's what happened. We took a bath after we'd go on a rest period in the war. We'd come back a bit, and we'd go to get washed up. We'd go into the river and get washed up, you know. And so, yeah, we'd wash our hair right there in the river. And I'd have to put more oil on. So my helmet, we'd use the helmet many times when all we had was this thing that they would bring, this big canvas thing they still use those. The big canvas thing, they would purify river water. They'd have these big things on legs, made out of canvas, a big thing. And they would take river water, put it in this canvas thing, and put chemicals in it to purify it so we could drink it. We'd take a bath with a helmet of water, and we'd take some of that water, and places where there was no river, we'd use that water out of that tank that we would use for drinking water, and use a helmet of water, wash our hair, wash our bodies, you know, just with a rag, you know, with a handkerchief or whatever we had. And that's the bath we would have at the rest period. And so my hair did get washed once in a while. So, but it was really, and then the helmet would get washed out too, because we'd have some soap. It would wash out some of that grease. So it wasn't totally a loss. But anyway, we were clean boys. we had a way to get washed up, but many times we'd go for months without a bath. I had 3 years and 3 months in total, so I was in the States hardly a year. I was at least 2 years overseas. I got to the point where I had looked on to so many bodies that I was happy when I saw a dead German. I felt ashamed for that feeling that I had. One time I sat on a tree stump, and there was a dead German right close to that tree stump. And I ate my lunch right there with that dead soldier, and I enjoyed it. I thought, here's that Christian boy that I am, you know. There I was, I saw how God spared me, and there I was. I was happy that there was a dead German there. And I thought how easily you can become hardened to the death of a human being. And so I was very conscious of the fact that it didn't take much for me to lose my Christian belief if I wasn't careful. And so I made sure that I didn't feel that way anymore. I had a physical ailment. In spite of all that God did for me, I began to have stomach ulcers. My stomach hurt like nobody's business, and I told the soldiers as we went into different homes, you know, after the people ran away, and the homes were all vacant. There were no people around. And we'd go into these homes lots of times. We'd eat our food, and we did drink our wine, you know. And so I told the truth. One friend of mine, I said, next time you go into a house, I said, if they have any wine, I said, I read the Bible. I said, The Word of God says if you have any ailments, you can drink a little wine for your stomach's sake. You know, it's in the scriptures, a little wine for your stomach's sake. And I said to the boys, I said, next time you go into a German home and you find there's some wine there, give me a bottle. I had a bad stomach, and I said, I can't eat the food. I said, I'm going to try and drink a little wine and see if I can get my stomach straightened out so I can eat the food. And so they brought me a bottle of wine. And I took a sip of wine, and I said, how could you drink this? I had never drank wine. And so I drank a couple of times, and I said, no, it's not for me. It's not for me. And it was just the hand of God, you know? It was the hand of God that worked in my life. It didn't permit me to drink. Many of our boys, they drank it by the gallon, you know, and they smoked cigarettes. I even tried cigarettes. I thought maybe that would help. It didn't, and I quit that. And so those were things that I felt were against my religion, my beliefs in Christ. And so I asked the Lord to forgive me for that. And so when I came home, I still had that stomach problem. After the war, we saw most of the troops were sent home back to the States, and we were waiting our turn. But in the meantime, they had us do guard duty, and we would eat in somebody's home. People worked the kitchen. They would set up a mess hall, and we'd go and eat at a certain time. And one time we had it fixed in a larger building, not a home. It was in a larger building, and they had set up the company kitchen in there, and the troops were going through, and there were some old German people that were poor, and they were starving because of the war. Things were destroyed, and many of them were without a home. And they would follow the troops wherever the troops were. They would ask for crumbs of bread, you know. And so this one time, in this building, it came I got in line with the rest of them, and I got in line for my dish of food. It had this metal, like a mess kit. And so I went to the mess kit, and he loaded me down with this food that he had there. And I looked over there, and in this room, there was an old lady standing there with little kids with little pans in their hand, and they would run to the garbage can, and they would stick it over the garbage can and get the soldiers' scraps that they would throw in the garbage can. Everybody had something that they threw back in the garbage can, you know, they wouldn't eat it all. And some of the food wasn't worth eating anyway. But anyway, I had my mess kit full of food, and I saw this woman over there, old lady, and these kids would all grab this food from the garbage can, and she wasn't getting any of it. I thought, that old lady's not going to get any food with all these kids here. And so I went over to her, and I gave her my whole mess kit. I dumped that whole thing in her pan. She had a pan there waiting for handout, and I dumped my whole thing in her pan. And I thought, this is a wonderful feeling that I was able to do that. And I stayed the rest of that day without eating because I gave it to her. And I felt good about it. I thought that's a Christian thing for me to do. And those are one of the little things that God laid in my heart to do. And so I just thank God that I had that much of Christ in my heart to do what was right for the people. In the dark, I walked home from downtown. I didn't want to ride anything. I wanted to walk all the way home like I used to. And so I walked all the way up home, and it was night. Mom and Dad were in bed, and she had her window open. It was summertime. And I got under her window. I said, Mom, that's Tony. And then I heard her say, "Oh, Tony, Tony!" And the dad got out of bed, and they all come running. Kids that my brother and sister came out of the house, come running down. They opened that door real quick, and I flood in there. Oh, what a reunion! 3 years I hadn't seen them. I came out of the Army, and I had some things that I wanted to keep. I took a dagger. It was some kind of a dagger. I forgot the name of it. I had one of those. I had a pistol. I had a pistol I wanted to keep. A 45. It was a 45, yeah. And I had several things that I wanted to keep for souvenirs. And not only those two things of war. When I got discharged, I had these things in my uniform. This was part of the uniform. I had all the uniform, and I had the hats, I don't know where they all went. But anyway, these things, this is expert rifleman. This is expert rifleman. Expert, a farmer from Pennsylvania, never had a gun in his hand, made expert. Had several things that I thought I would keep, especially the pistol and the dagger. And when I went to Bible college, I brought that with me to Bible college, and I thought I'd show off, that I had something from the Army. And there was a missionary, a brother, and he and his wife were going to go to Africa to be missionaries in Africa. He was a grown man, and a long time Christian. I think he was in ministry even before deciding to go in the mission field. And so I thought, he's going to have to go hunting sometime to get food enough to eat. I thought, well, I don't need this pistol. So I went to him and I said, "Here, I'll give you my trophy from the war." I says, "I wanted to keep this, but I'm going to donate it to you because you're going to Africa and you're going to have to hunt for your food many times." I says, "Here, you can take this pistol, and as a missionary, you're not going to kill people with it, but you're going to hunt. You're going to do some hunting for food with this pistol." So I gave it to him. And that's what I did with that. And I had other things I gave away, and I didn't. This I think is a good conduct medal, isn't it? You don't know what this is? I think that's a good conduct medal. I was a good boy. Yeah, here it is. Good conduct medal. That's what it is. I was a good boy. All because of Jesus. Yeah, that was a dress buckle. Oh, German. I probably took it off a dead German's uniform. You couldn't get it off a live German. Yeah, they wear these on their hats. They have it on their uniform here, on their hat. Yeah, this is German uniform.
What is this? Do you know?
That's off of the hat, their cap.
What was that, like maybe motorized or?
Oh, I don't know. If it could be just common soldiers. And even the officers had something like this on their uniforms. The swastika. That's a swastika. I took this off a German uniform. I didn't want to bring the whole uniform here. German.
Yeah.
I must have found it in the ground the way it looks. That must have been an old soldier
Yeah.
to have a 1930 thing on his uniform. And this was my Jeep. Oh, I had Newcastle, Pennsylvania on it. You'd be surprised, sometimes I was going through Germany and somebody from Newcastle would see my Jeep with Newcastle. And we'd have a real good talk together. 80th Division, 319th Infantry. The 1943 Tennessee maneuvers, I went out for a swim somewhere. Washing the Jeep here. July, September of 43. That was Camp Forest, Tennessee. I had a buddy on my Jeep in the war. He was from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and he stayed on my Jeep until the end of the war. And he's the guy I told, keep his finger on the trigger. And I said, and don't hesitate. And at the same time I prayed, Lord, don't let anybody come out, so he'd have to fire on them. But Buddy Linus, see his name comes to me? That's way back, 1940. I remember his name, Buddy Linus. Oh, this is in Germany. That looks like a nice farm there. I should go back and find this. Look at that, two nice houses there, big house. I met some good partial Germans that had pictures and things to give the soldiers. Germany, 1945. I drove through this town when the Germans started their drive on the Bulge. Oh, the Battle of the Bulge. Yeah, Luxembourg is bordering Germany. We were right on that border. Both, we could step 1 foot here in Germany and 1 foot in Nuremberg. And the Siegfried Line was a big defense of the Germans. They had a big place of going to have the last battle, Siegfried Line. And the river crossing, we crossed over that river. They managed to repair the bridge enough that we could use it. The Germans bombed it, but they didn't totally destroy it. See, here it is right here, the Rhine River. The Rhine River is the biggest river in Germany. So they had put pontoon bridge. They put a pontoon bridge in there so the troops could cross that big river. God gives me a nice wife. The first thing I was interested in when I came home, to go to church and find a girlfriend. I wanted a wife. I was 24. How old were you
24,
when you got married?
21,
21.
21.
I was 24. I would have got married if I didn't go to war. I would have got married at 21. Because I had a girlfriend, but I didn't have her anymore after I went to war. Oh, you want a story of my girlfriend? Huh? You want that? That's a little love affair. All right. This girl we went to the same church, and we were thoroughly Pentecostal people, baptized in the Holy Spirit. Her mother and father and brothers went to church. We went to my family went to the same church. We were born again Christians. Believed in not only being born again, we believed in being baptized in the Holy Spirit with the speaking in other tongues. And there was a spirit of revival going on at that time in this area. A great influx of people being born again into the churches of that day. And this family were very close to my family. My dad and this girl's father worked at the same place, a cement plant in Wampum, Pennsylvania. And through the parents, the family became friendly. We associated, was real friendly with the whole family. Their kids, with my folks' kids, very friendly. And so this girl, that they had one daughter and two boys, one daughter and two boys. The daughter, I think, was the eldest of the three. And I was coming to the age when I was interested in girls. In high school, I was interested in girls, but I never got close to them. I didn't dare to, because I didn't want to fall in love with an unsaved girl. And so I was looking for a Christian girl at that time, and I thought, of all the people that I know, this girl is a Christian. She goes to church every day, and I see her at church. And so she was somewhat younger than me. I don't know how many years younger, maybe 3, 4, 5, maybe even 5 years younger than me. I felt I was older, and so I looked at her, and as any boy would, and say, well, she's a pretty girl, and I think I'd like to make her my girlfriend. And so I knew she had talked around with boys, you know, but I didn't know that she had a steady boyfriend. She never did, until I asked her. But like a good boy, I even asked her parents if they minded if I was her boyfriend. So that's what I was taught by my father, that I wasn't just to go and date a girl and run off to the bushes with her, you know. And so I asked her father and mother, and they liked me because I was a Pallott. They knew my father, you know. And so, yes, they gave me permission to date her. But I had a car at that time, an old 31 Chevy, 1931. Not 91, 51, 31. And it had a rumble seat. It had a seat in the back that you can open up, you know, for fresh air, and you could sit in the back. But anyway, I never took her out in my car. I didn't believe in it. People would get ideas that we were out. I saw ungodly people. I saw older people. I saw them. Sometimes I'd go right up our street where I lived, and I would see cars in the woods with girls, men, boys with girls. And I saw that, and I said, that's the way the world does. And so I made up my mind I would not take my girl for a ride in a car. I didn't want people to talk about us out doing things that we're not supposed to do. as young people. And so I never took her out for a ride in my car. And so I was very respectful with her. But I loved her. I really loved her, and I wanted to marry her. The draft came on, and I was drafted. I got this letter from Uncle Sam. I was to go to the Army. So, you talk about a broken heart. She had a broken heart. I was affected too, because I was really in love, and I wanted her. I wanted to marry her. I went in the service, and I communicated with her by letter. Maybe 2 or 3 times a week. I don't know. I don't remember now. But as often as I could, I wrote a letter. She'd write me. And the mail clerk, he'd come out there with a bag of mail, you know, and he'd yell out, Sergeant so-and-so, PFC so-and-so, Sergeant so-so, and Corporal so-so. And he'd make a remark. And he'd smell it. He'd say, oh, this is your girl. And he'd say she put perfume in it, you know. And he'd make a big joke and make everybody laugh, you know, with our mail. And I'd get my mail too. Oh, he'd say, oh, there's Valley, Tony, there's Valley. And then he'd smell it, say, yeah. And he'd make a big joke of it. And so I wrote letters constantly with her before going overseas. And I hadn't had a furlough yet. And so in the midst of all that letter writing, it came time for me to have my furlough. Then I was going overseas. So I go home on furlough. Where do you think I went? First thing I did is go see my girlfriend. I was in love, you know, like most young men when they're in love. And we sat on the porch. It was summertime. We sat on the porch and talked, and somebody had already told me that she was corresponding with Jimmy, my friend. Jimmy, a boy in the church. It was a friend of mine, and he and I buddied around, and his father had a huckster truck, you know, selling vegetables and fruit. His father did that, and I repaired his father's truck, and we were close friends. Jimmy and I were like brothers. And when I went overseas, when I went in the service, Jimmy went in the service. He was drafted too, or he volunteered. He was special. He volunteered. And so I was corresponding with her, and he was. In fact, he got married before. He got married before he went overseas, and before he went into service. And I think he had a child with his girlfriend. He had a child. He was married. And he had a child before he went into service. And so something came up. I says, do you hear anything about Jimmy? Because he was my friend. I felt free to ask her, where did Jimmy go? And I asked some questions. Did his parents say anything to your parents? Talk about Jimmy, you know. I wanted all the information about Jimmy. Then she says, oh yeah, I wrote to him. I said, are you writing to him regularly? Well, you know, I'm writing. I said, how about it? Show me one of his letters. Oh no, that wasn't right. Show his letters. Here's a married man in the service with a child writing to my girlfriend. What for? I found out that while he was in the service, he divorced his wife. While he's in the service, he divorced his wife. He must have come home to do that. And he starts writing to her. And she wouldn't tell me anything. Oh, we're just friends. We're just friends. he's lonely. He comes home from for a furlough, and I talk with him. I said, well, can you show me one of his letters? I'm interested in what he writes about. She wouldn't do it. Here I was home on furlough. I says, hey, I'm going overseas when I go back in from furlough. And you're not going to show me one letter? And she denied. There's nothing between us. I says, well, why won't you show me one of his letters? I don't want to. Okay. I said, you either show me, I got to the point where I had it. I wasn't going to beg anymore. I says, either you show me one letter and I'll be satisfied, or I call it quits. You can forget me. And I wanted to marry her. And that was hard for me to say. I said, either you show me one letter or it's quits. No, I can't show you the letter. I said, I'm going in and say goodbye to your mother, then I say goodbye to you. I went in the house, I said goodbye to her mother, and I says, I'm finished with your daughter. She wrote to Jimmy, and she won't show me a letter. Goodbye. Off I went. Never saw her anymore. And he married her. You know, he died not too long after he married her. He died. I never got to see Jimmy when we come out of the war. He died. Now, that was her. I go to the Assembly of God Church over here after we moved here, and the Assembly of God had a big Christmas program, you know, with the stage all set and everything. And her brother was there at that showing of this Christmas program. And after the program was over, we got out into the lobby of the church, and we began to talk with different people we knew. And David was there, and Laurie, and my wife, my grandma was there, and her brother comes up to me. He says, come over here, I want to show you somebody. I thought, who's he got that wants me to see? I never thought of it. I says, I wonder who he wants me to see. And he's snickering, you know. What is he snickering about? Come on, I want to show you. I want you to meet somebody. Here was Valley, my former girlfriend. And they thought I was going to, I don't know what they expected me to do, you know. So I said, oh, hi, how are you? And I shook hands with her. I didn't kiss her. I shook hands with her, and that was it. And then I walked away. They expected me to hold a big conversation. They were wrong. But anyway, I have nothing against her. Now I heard that she was in a rest home, and I don't know if I heard that she died or what. I didn't follow. She's still in town. Was still in town here, and I've been in California and had all my kids. I come here to do a work for God. So there it is. There was a girlfriend that I had that I was serious with. It wasn't God's will. That's it. And that was the end of it. I don't regret it because I took a stand. I took a Christian stand, and she wasn't honoring it. And I think every young man should have a Christian standard that he lives by. And the woman, we girls, should have a standard, a Christian standard that you live by. And God will provide. He'll provide the proper person for you. And that's what I believe in. God is a great God. And His desire is to have us be a Christian, good Christian and be an example to the rest of the world. So that's my story. I have given you two the story I never told anybody. I grew up in Newcastle until I went to the Army. And then when I came home, that's when I began to wander off. I went to Bible, I went to Bible college, got married. That started me rolling away, going different places. I went to Bible college, and from there, different towns.
Where around here did you live?
In Newcastle?
When you were a kid?
In Newcastle, well, it's a north side, they call that north side, up Croton. They call it Croton area. C-R-O-T-O-N, Croton. That's where I was born and raised. I was raised in the same house. I went to the Army from the same house I was born in. My mother, she just, I think I was her special boy. She loved me like, I would grab her hands, I would hold her hands and struggle with her like he does with his mother. I do that. I did that with my mother, and we had a lot of fun together. The others, they got their whippings, but I never got a whipping. The only time my mother hit me, my brother, he's dead now. My brother had done something wrong. My mother had a watch. It was a pendant. Is that what you call it? Pendant watch. It was on a chain, a little watch. It was somebody, my dad must have bought it for her. It was a wedding gift or something. But she had that. It was a treasure for her. She put it in a little bowl on her dresser. She didn't wear it all the time. She put it in her dress, on her dresser. And one day she was looking for this watch, and she couldn't find it. And she knew some of her brats got into it. She knew us kids pretty good. She knew who was a good kid and who was not. And she knew which one needed the spanking. And she went to each one of us. There was about 4 or 5 of us at that time, all little, you know. I was the oldest, I think, at that time. And she, did you take my watch? No, I never saw it. You take my watch? No. Nobody. Even the one who was guilty. No, I never saw it. So she said, I know what I have to do. I have to start spanking. So she got a little stick. She started spanking right down the line. She got every one of us, gave us our share. And we all cried, you know. I forget how old we were. We were all crying. Even the guilty one was crying. And I don't know what happened. Maybe he got more. Maybe she suspected he was the one who did that. And she must have given him an extra heavy dose. And he cried and he confessed. What did he do? He stole her watch and he took it to school and he traded it for some little toy. My mother's precious watch. He traded it with some kid for some little toy. It was my brother Frank. He was almost my twin, you know, and he's the one that just died. But she got the answer she wanted by whipping us. But my mother, she was good. She very seldom spanked us, very seldom. Now my dad, he very seldom spanked us, but if we weren't ready at the table when it was dinner time, if we thought it was better to play and have fun outdoors, and especially in the summertime, and we got home late for dinner, my dad would not start to eat dinner until all the kids were around the table, everybody. He had 9 children at that point, and everybody had to be there. Nobody was married, and everybody had their place And if there was one missing, it would show. You could see who was missing. And so, many times we would be busy up the street with some other kid, sometimes some little girl. We would be having fun because we were playing with girls, you know. And my dad would come out after us. He wouldn't start dinner. They would wait till these brats that were out there knowing it was time to eat and they weren't coming home. And so he got you, boy, when he get you. And he'd take me by the ear like that and take me home with my ear in his hand. And lots of times he'd give us a little boot, you know. And I don't know how many times he pulled my ear, but I had my chance too. I had my turn. I wasn't always faithful. You get out there. I'd never owned a bicycle, you know. Who owned a bicycle in Depression days? But some rich kid, you know. And so the rich kid didn't want anybody to snatch his bike away from him. If he'd go in the house, he'd put a lock and chain on his wheel so nobody could take a ride. But at times he'd forget to put the chain on. And us kids that didn't have a toy to play with, we'd run off with his bike and we'd have a nice run right down the side streets. We'd go as far as we could and come back with it. Then he'd grab us, you know, and take his bike away from us. But anyway, that was how we had a bike ride, by stealing it from a kid. In fact, I even remind him, now he's still living, he's my age, he was in my class in school. His father had money, but they only had 2 or 3 kids, so they had money to spend for bikes. But I still remind him how I used to steal his bike and go for a ride. But here's what happened. I got my ear pulled. I was having fun, you know. And so I taken this friend's bike, and I got this girl down the street. I put her on the handlebars, you know, and I was giving her a ride back and forth, up and down the street in front of her father's house. I wasn't going anywhere, just in front of her father's house, with this girl on my bike, on the bike that I borrowed. And my father comes looking for me, and here I am sitting on a bike with a girl. Boy, was I embarrassed. I thought, how could I forget it was dinner time? I was having fun. I had a girl on the bike. Well, I got my share of paddling. So I learned not to get hooked up with a girl. You're bound to go home late.
Is that house you lived in still there?
Yeah, it's still there. Still, it's too bad we can't go up there and see it. Maybe we could after we eat. Huh? It'd be good. You could take a picture of it. I don't even have a picture of it, I don't think. Yeah, it was on a dirt street. It was a dirt street. Today it's paved, but it was a dirt street and dirt sidewalk. And and we used to, when it had a big rain, the street went downhill a little bit. And when it rained, it had a gutter on both sides of the street where the water would gush down. If it was a storm, real storm, boy, a big storm of water going down the street. And we'd take our shoes and socks off, and walking in that water, having a ball, you know, get our pants all wet, then go home and get a paddling for get all wet. But yeah, on that street, we had lots of fun. The Iceman, we had an Iceman in those days. He'd have a horse and a wagon, a flat wagon. He'd buy big 500-pound chunks of ice, and the ladies of the house would have a ticket with 25, 50, 75, 100. Not 100, it wouldn't be that one. How many pounds of ice they would want this Iceman. He's coming up the street, and he has an ice pick. He cuts out this big chunk, out of this big chunk. He cuts out a chunk of ice according to what this woman has stationed on her window, this ticket. She have a ticket up that says 25. So he'll chop out a 25-pound piece, supposedly. He probably get a 20-pound piece and give it to her for 25.
Yeah.
And he made money that way. So that's how they had their ice box. That's a refrigerator. They called it ice box. This iceman would come up with a chunk of ice and sell it piece by piece to every house. But anyway, that chisel, that pick, that ice pick, while he's chopping, it's making little slivers, and all of the bottom of the wagon have all these slivers of ice. And we kids in our bare feet wanted to run after this wagon. Yeah, the horse, the horse would go up. He'd keep going up, and while he's going up, he's busy watching the horse, and we're hanging on the back tailgate of this wagon and reaching in with one hand and holding on with the other and trying to get some of those chunks of ice to put in our mouth. And so that was the Iceman of that day, and we had fun just going after the Iceman to get the little chunk of ice so we could chew on it. Talk about ice cream, that was ice cream for us. Those were fun days, but we were poor. Our shoes would wear out, Depression time. My dad had pieces of leather that he took home from the job he had at the plant. The belts that run the machinery were out of leather in those days. Today there are different materials, the belts that run the machines. But anyway, my dad, as a repairman, when he'd repair a belt for the company he's working for, there was pieces of belt that he'd have to cut off to make the splice. And he'd bring home these pieces of belts, leather belt, and we half sold our shoes. When they couldn't buy new shoes, so he'd repair our shoes with that pieces of leather, and that was making new shoes for us, so we didn't have snow and ice going into our toes. That's what we had to put up with back in the Depression days when we were very, very poor. One pair of pants for school, and that was it. One pair of pants. My mother would make our shirts. She would buy goods and make our shirts. She'd make my sister's dresses. She'd have a foot pedal sewing machine, and she'd make these clothes. That's how we lived.